All right, for today's lesson, we are basically doing the same thing we did in the last lesson, but instead of equations with square roots, we're doing equations with cube roots. So if you compare these lesson notes to the lesson notes from the previous lesson, you'll notice they're basically the same. Okay, instead of isolating the square root, we're going to isolate the cube root. Instead of squaring both sides, we're going to cube both sides, since cubing and cube rooting are opposites of each other. And then we'll go ahead and solve for x. The big difference is down here. Okay. We talked about in the previous lesson how if you end up with the square root of something equals a negative number, we've talked about how that type of equation does not have a solution because you can't take the square root of a number and have the answer just be negative. You can take the cube root of a number and have the answer just be negative. An example I gave was the cube root of negative 27. The cube root of negative 27 is negative 3, because negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3 is negative 27. So the big difference is there aren't going to be any cases of no solutions with this example. So other than cube roots instead of square roots and cubing instead of squaring, the way we do it is going to be exactly the same. Okay, so let's take a look at our examples. For number one, the first thing we want to do is we want to isolate the cube root. In this case, the cube root is already isolated. Okay, there's nothing on the left-hand side with the cube root, so I can go right ahead and cube both sides. All right, if I cube both sides, the cube will cancel out the cube root, leaving me with x plus 4. On the right-hand side, 3 cubed is 3 times 3 times 3. So 3 times 3 is 9, times 3 is 27. And then I can solve for x by subtracting 4 from both sides, and I get x equals 27 minus 4, which is 23. So x equals 23. Okay. Number 2, okay, we do have some isolating we need to do. Okay, so I need to get rid of the plus 4 here. I need to get rid of the minus 4 by adding 4, adding 4 to both sides. So that gives me the cube root of 3 minus x equals 0 plus 4. Now I can go ahead and cube both sides. Okay, so that gives me 3 minus x equals 4 cubed. So 4 times 4 is 16. Times 4 is 64. So 4 cubed is 64. All right. Now I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. So this gives me negative x equals 61. Now remember that negative is really a negative 1. So that's really negative 1. So to finish this off, I'm going to divide both sides by negative 1. And I end up with x equals 61 divided by negative 1. So x equals negative 61. Okay. Number 3, we do have some isolating that we need to do. So I have to get rid of that 2. Since that's being multiplied, I'm going to get rid of it by dividing both sides by 2. So I end up with the cube root of x equals 20 divided by 2. So that's going to be 10. Okay. Now I can go ahead and I can cube both sides. Okay. So I'll go ahead and cube both sides. So that gets rid of that. and I end up with x equals 10 cubed. 10 times 10 is 100, times 10 is 1,000. So x equals 1,000. Okay. Number 4. Once again, I have some isolating that I need to be able to do. So I have to subtract 9 from both sides. So I have the cube root of 2x minus 3 equals 0 minus 9. I now need to cube both sides. Okay, so that leaves me with 2x minus 3 equals negative 9 cubed. Now remember, if this were a square root, we would stop right here and say that it has no solution. If I had the square root of 2x minus 3 equals negative 9, we would say that has no solution for the reasons that we've previously stated. But because it's a cube root, we can now go ahead and solve it. So negative 9 times negative 9 times negative 9. So let's do that. Negative 9 times negative 9 is 81. Times negative 9 is negative 729. All right, so now I'm going to add 3 to both sides. All right, so negative 729 plus 3 equals negative 726. Now I'm going to go ahead and finish it off by dividing both sides by 2. So negative 726 divided by 2 is negative 363. So x equals negative 363. Okay, and that is it for lessons 8 and 9.